Today's guest is someone deeply immersed in your world, with insights born from experience and grounded in healing. Carly Kingswood is a trauma therapist, former foster carer of 10 years, a consultant, supervisor, trainer, and author. Based in Southwest England, she worked across child and adolescent mental health services, adoption support, therapeutic life story work, and now trains carers and residential staff for nationally recognised providers. Before we turn to Carly at the end, I want to let you know that at the end we'll have time for questions, and please put those in the chat so that we can pick them up for Carly. Okay, so hello, Carly, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's very exciting to see you. So first I want to talk about therapeutic parenting for childhood, aggression and violence, which is really what you specialize in. And I want to talk to you about why this matters now and why you chose to spotlight aggression and violence in children for this talk.
I guess over the years, I've come across more and more families who are struggling with this issue. And then I don't know, some years ago, I was in talks with Sally Donovan, for those that know her and her work. And it was felt there was a need for a book around this to support families, to support professionals. So we wrote a book, and I get kind of consulted about this issue a lot. I feel like it's kind of a bit of a specialism for me these days. So why not talk about it?
And can you tell us some of the things that lead to trauma? We might not recognize that a child is traumatized, perhaps, but what are some of the things that you've seen?
So the majority of the trauma that I'm dealing with is what's called developmental or complex trauma. This is characterized by parenting that is highly inconsistent, erratic, or abusive in childhood, particularly in early childhood. And it's where there's a repeat of it. There's no let up, and the ability to recover from that trauma isn't there. But in addition to those things, I've written bullying. I've known children really suffer with their mental health, and it starts with a period of bullying. If you've lost someone, if you've lost a parent or a significant adult, if you've been displaced, if you're a refugee, if you've lost everything that you've ever known, and of course that in many respects is the epitome of what children in foster care and who come to be adopted experience. If parental separation, discrimination, of course. And something like, say, if a child is very unwell and they have to have lots of treatment, particularly again if they're very, very small. We know the body keeps the score. And I talk a lot in my work with children and their parents about, oh my goodness, like from you've come in and you just told me about your day at the beach with mum and dad, and that's really lovely. And you can tell me, like, you've got a story with a beginning and a middle and an end. And that's what I call a story memory. But when you were really little and you weren't safe, and up until you were about 2 or 3, you didn't have story memories, you had body memories. And that's why sometimes you find yourself feeling really big feelings in situations that actually we know are safe, but your body doesn't know that it's safe, because the body's holding those memories and those unsafe memories.
So they just sort of get wired in. And so parenting or parenting before fostering can be important in that. Perhaps a violent or aggressive or erratic parent might lead you to feel that you're not safe, that kind of thing as well. Is that what you meant?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, when we talk about abuse, we often think of physical abuse or sexual abuse, but, a tiny baby is completely reliant on, for a really, really long time. Humans aren't terribly efficient when we're born. You compare it to a newborn lamb at the farm where I work, and I watch them, and within a few hours, they can do everything they kind of need. They can keep warm. They can they can find their mum, get their milk, get their needs met. A human baby can't do that. A human baby would die in hours if they didn't have an adult taking care of them. And so for a baby whose needs are unmet, and are left alone, or it's inconsistent, or there's loud, scary noises, that's trauma. That baby feels like it's going to die, and it can't differentiate between hunger or a pooey nappy or whatever. So children experience a sense of life threat even when if they were 7 years old, they wouldn't experience that. Which is why it's, trauma is
Yeah.
it's the key to usually
Yeah.
the aggression.
Can start at birth or very, very young.
Or
And
even in utero. That's really important to remember as well, is that a lot of the children that I work with that do display aggression and other types of attachment need behaviours, that they were adopted at like 2 weeks old or something. But their in utero experience was so difficult that has led them to be very dysregulated children.
what have you observed about the interplay of trauma and biology, so nature, and the environment, sort of nurture in fostered teens? Because you've fostered your own teens, I don't know how many, but
Yeah.
have you noticed that there is a sort of biological component?
Of course, yeah. I mean, attachment needs in themselves. So, um, John Bowlby, I'm not going to go massively into theory, don't worry, but John Bowlby, who came up with the idea of attachment theory, he said it was biological because of the thing that I've been talking about. You've got Larry the lamb and Harry the human. And Larry the lamb's kind of pretty self-sufficient within hours or days. And because human babies are so absolutely reliant on their carers for survival, he said that although it's a biological, that to create, to cry, to make your needs known is a biological necessity in babies, and it's become completely enmeshed with our emotions as well, because it's about survival, and it's about feeling safe or not feeling safe.
Yeah.
And so our job, as foster carers, is about creating a sense of safety in every moment of every day. So that might be about, one little girl, adopted child of our friends, and we looked after her overnight. And I knew this. I knew that she'd been very, very neglected, and I knew she worried about food. And so she walked in, and the first thing I did was say, "Open the fridge, darling. Take a good look." Um, Open the cupboards. For her, safety is access to food. And so you show them, look, this is safe. Um, I mean, I could give so many examples. Children who are going back to school, go and do a little safety walk around the school. Where's the exit? Where am I going to sit? What's my teacher? Where's my tent that I go to when I'm dysregulated? It could be about the making sure that your child has a lot of prediction. So we're going to go to grandma's this afternoon, and there's going to be a bit of talking around the adults, and it might get a bit boring. So what can we do when it gets a bit boring so that you're feeling safe and you know that I'm here for you, even though I'm talking to grandma? Should we have a secret sign, or do you want to give me a tug on my jacket? So it's letting the child know, I see you. I see that this thing might be difficult for you. What can we do about it?
So you talk about, yeah, these really interesting examples, but it may be difficult to find out the core of the trauma. It may be that children are just acting out and you don't really know why. You don't know that it's a food issue or, some inconsistent parenting. So why do children act out, and how do you identify those things?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't always know the why. And it's really important that we don't expect children to know the why as well. So we've got to be really curious about what's going on for them. Gosh, it felt like we were having a really good day. I wonder what happened for it to go really wrong. I don't suppose you know, and I don't know, but I wonder if I don't know, when we went to ask the man if we could pet his dog and he said the dog wasn't friendly, that was really hard for you. So we don't always kind of have to know, but we can't expect the child to know. We've just got to have this big, open, curious heart, I think. There was a time when I still don't know why. So our foster daughter, she's very happy for us to talk about it. She every Wednesday night, she would get really dysregulated for about a year, and we did not ever find out why.
How
But
did that manifest when you say dysregulated? What did she do?
she would pick fights. She would try and make us cross.
How old
She
was she at that point?
11 or 12, probably
Yeah.
12,
Yeah.
12. She yeah, she would get kind of in a form of aggression that I call this sort of menacing, sulky, and it feels it actually, for me, that feels worse than when, the screaming and shouting or the pushing and shoving starts, because I kind of like, then that's completely active and it's happening and you have to deal with it and create safety. Whereas when it feels like it on the ramp up, it's a really horrible feeling to live with. And it was kind of doing that for a while. And then we were talking about this in supervision with our amazing social worker. Um, and she was like, we need to put some support in. And so they had a couple of support workers, and they would come along every Wednesday night. They'd take her out for a couple of hours. They do beading with her. They take her for a drink, all kinds of things. And it just was enough of a distraction for her to be able to then come home, shower, and always once she'd showered, when we helped her to learn how to shower, um, then that was in her routine, and she would go to bed and it would be much, much better. So we never figured out why, but we figured out there's a trigger and she needs some help in regulating outside of the house.
How do you deal with nonverbal? So, you talked about trying to understand and identify when there's a sort of escalation of anger or rage or acting out. But if the child's too young to talk or they're not particularly verbal, is that another challenge? And is it sort of the same approach?
Um, it the curiosity is definitely the same approach. So if you think about, again, a baby, they can't tell you whether they need a burp, whether they need their nappy change, whether they're hungry, and you learn this stuff about them because you connect with them. But for any of us who've ever kind of held or cared for a baby, we find ourselves doing this thing of like, oh my goodness, what do you need? Is it your nappy? Give you smell? No, it's not your nappy. I wonder, do you need some more
Right.
milk? And
Yeah.
we do that very, very naturally with newborn babies. And that's one of the reasons that Dan Hughes has included curiosity as part of his approach to therapeutic parenting. So with a little one, you'd be doing the same. You'd be like, oh my gosh, was that a really loud noise? I don't know. And there would be lots and lots of attempts at soothing that child, and the tone of our voice is everything. So children who are traumatized don't have a sense of neutrality. So right now I'm kind of talking in a fairly neutral tone. Um, but when I'm with a traumatized kid, I really have to kind of switch that up, because I have to really, really convey positivity to that child, because they don't have a middle ground. Something is either wrong or it's right. It's safe or it's not safe. And so we have to work really hard on our facial expressions and the tone of our voice to convey that safety. And that's exactly what we do for little ones right through to 25-year-olds.
So let's talk. I mean, people are listening here, and some of them may want to know about some of those tools for, we call it sometimes de-escalation. I know you have different words, but how does one de-escalate? How do you repair a child who is going into this zone of a red zone? What are your go-to strategies? And I'm sure they're not just one for de-escalating an aggressive, violent, or really acting out moment. And how do you rebuild that relationship afterwards?
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I don't tend to use, absolutely, we de-escalate, but I try not to use that word very much, because I think foster carers and adoptive parents, SGO parents get told that all the time, or it's all about de-escalation, and that can feel kind of frustrating when everything you're doing is trying to de-escalate. So instead, I kind of talk about those zones of regulation. So we've got green, which is safe and social. We've got amber, which is kind of fight and flight, and we do go through flight before flight, flight before we go up into fight, which is really important. And then you've got the red zone, full on rage, fight. And then at the other end, in the hyperized zone, we call that blue, and that's about shutdown. And quite often after an episode of being in the red zone, lots of our children will then go into shutdown before they can go back up into green. That's not.
What does that look like? I mean, can you give us some examples
Yeah.
of that?
So that might sort of, the more extreme is a very kind of shut off state, very glazed eyes, big dilation of pupils, non-verbal, staring straight ahead, very like not in touch with their body at all.
Does it
It
always happen after a red zone, or is it only in some cases? In
No,
some,
only in some cases, because some kids will then, leave the house, shout and swear, leave the house, go for a walk around the block, and then come in like nothing's happened. They've regulated themselves through having that walk and that
right.
scream and shout. It can also look like falling asleep. It can just look like going up to their room, slamming the door, laying on the bed, zoning out on, I don't know, TikTok or whatever. And then they're back in the green zone. And the reason all of this is important is because it's not just kids that have these zones of regulation. We all do. All humans have these zones of regulation. And what's really important is that not only do we know where our kid is in blue, green, amber, red, but where we are. Because where we are, that kid's only going to be able to regulate if we'd stay out of red. Now, of course, we go to red. We're human. I've done it plenty of times. I've shouted, I've yelled, I've said the wrong thing. Absolutely, I'm just human. But the ideal, of course, which we've got to talk about, is when our kids go up into amber and into red, we will, because of our nervous systems, our nervous systems will respond to our own sense of danger or our own sense of anxiety, and we will start to go from green to amber. But it's about being really aware of that and catching it as soon as it happens. Maybe saying, and you can use the words, I'm feeling a bit amberish. I'm just going to go sit in the garden for a bit. I will be right back. I'm not leaving you. I'm just going out into the garden.
And you would use those words with a child. You would say, "I'm feeling like this." You would communicate that, would you? You
Yeah,
first
yeah. I mean,
acknowledge it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I would I wouldn't make it about them. I would say, I'm okay. You're okay. This isn't okay. So I'm going
So
to
acknowledge and then regulate. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've got to model that regulation for ourselves. Now, the risk is that a child might feel abandoned if you walk away, and also some children don't want you to walk away in that moment. But it's kind of conveying, I will be right back. I'm going around the block like I always do. I will be back, and I will be more calm, and I will be better able to help you. I talk a lot about how if you've ever been on a flight and they do the safety demonstration, they always say, put on, if you are caring for someone else, in the case of an emergency, you put your own gas mask on first before you then help someone else. Because if you ain't getting the oxygen, they're dead anyway.
Yeah.
So it's conveying, I'm going to step away because this doesn't feel very helpful right now.
So with the green, amber, red, and then the shut off, let's have a look at some of those strategies. So first of all, you have to regulate your own, acknowledge your emotion, go and regulate the emotion. Some people may be very able to regulate and not get emotional, some rare people. But what about those strategies? Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, so I'm just going to give you an example. So one parent, I was doing a similar podcast, and a parent said to me, my teenage son, when he becomes dysregulated, he locks us in a room together, and it could be 2 hours until we can get out. And I said, well, tell me a bit about how your son came to you. What was his kind of early life like? And essentially, this boy, I won't tell you what it was, but this boy was clearly terrified that once he'd kicked off, his mum would abandon him and his mum would leave him. So what did he do? He fought for her, and he kept them both in a room. And then she says, and I try and reason with him, and I tell him I'm not going to go anywhere, but he still won't let us out until he's de-escalated hours later. He's calmer hours later. And I said, what I want you to do is have that conversation about abandon with him when you and he are in green. The more conversations we can have with our kids about what happens when and what leads to red zone episodes, the more they can take it on, because their brain, their logical brain, is shut down. They are in absolute survival mode. At times they feel like their very being is threatened. So trying to have conversations with kids in red zone is pointless. when a kid is in red zone, we've just got to do anything we can to get back to safety. And that's fewer words, but really, really important on the tone of your voice. So for some kids, that's about saying, okay, I've got you. You're safe. You're going to be all right. You're okay. I'm okay. This isn't okay. I need you to put that down. So it might be quite a, um, a clear kind of firm but fair kind of tone. Or for others, that might need to be I've got you. I've got you. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going anywhere. And that's different for different kids. And you've just got to learn that about your kid. So it's really important that when a child is in red, because they can't hear what you're saying really anyway, the brain takes a diversion to turn up the tone processing and turn down language processing. And again, we've got to be really aware of our body language. So that's kind of, I mean, obviously, if things stay in the red zone and it gets really unsafe, we might have to call the police. We might have to, have other kind of outside help. There's a lot in the book about how to do that, well, like how to involve neighbors, how to involve friends, not in a shamey way at all, just about getting other people on board. If I send you a text that says help, this is what I need you to do. Because sometimes just a neighbor calling by saying, did you want that milk at Tesco? Other supermarkets are available. And that can be enough of a circuit breaker for the child to then maybe just go down to Amber or go to their room or whatever. So there's loads in the book about that, about kind of what we call safety plans.
So if the child is acting out, maybe hitting, spitting, biting, whatever, or kicking or anything, then you're saying cut the communication, do not communicate except to get them safe.
And saying communicate safety. Don't say, now remember what we're supposed to do when we're in, or don't say, I don't know what this is all about, or long sentences. It's about having a really connected, safe tone with that child and helping them to regulate, knowing when they need touch, knowing when not to touch. There are times in sessions where a child is kind of dysregulating and a parent will put their hand and it will get hit away. And then they kind of go to do it again. And I do this because at that moment, touch is too much, that the connection in itself is too much. So this is all about learning your kids. You're not going to know this the minute that they walk through the door, right? But it's about noticing what they need in those moments. And for a child, it's kind of in red zone, it's about kind of conveying safety in terms of your relationship and in terms of who you are as a safe person. But it's also about what I call flight safety. And that's why I said earlier, it's flight before fight. And the more we can utilize the flight zone, the better. So that might be, you've had a green zone conversation. Like I said earlier, this feels a bit like it's getting a bit heated. Should one of us go for a walk around the block? It could be that they do that by themselves. They go upstairs screaming and shouting and slam a door. That's absolutely fine. That's much, much better than if you're, sorry, the dog's just been let in. If you're trying to bring a child down from red, creating that flight safety is really important. And that you can do that a number of ways.
So we've talked before, haven't we? And you've mentioned that no child wants to hurt you. No child wants to create this disruption. But what they're feeling themselves is a sense of fear. And you've talked a lot about shame. Can you just touch on that? Touch on the shame element, why this happens?
So shame is absolutely the rocket fuel for aggression. And where that comes from is shame is actually, when we're teeny tiny, shame is a socialization emotion. So it's about learning what's acceptable and what's not. So for example, that when you enter toddlerhood, you suddenly are aware that you can do so much stuff. You can make adults smile. You can reach out a bit further. You can walk or toddle. You can engage someone's face in a supermarket and they'll smile at you and you'll smile back. You can pop mum's nose or, and she'll make the beep noise. So it's this real, it's this developmental period where our egos are really, really big because we're like, get me, look at all this stuff that I can do. And shame comes in when unexpectedly that ego gets crashed out. So, for instance, the child in the supermarket reaches out for something that you don't want, you take it off them and you put it back, and there's the big old toddler tantrum. It's like, why have you done that? I just reached out and I took a thing. I really wanted that thing that was absolutely useless to me. It's also, I give the example of if I was silly enough to leave a sharp knife too close to the edge of a surface and my son reached out and tried to get it, what would I do? I'd yell, no. And he would go into shame. He would startle. He'd probably look at the floor and burst into tears. But what's the thing that I'm going to do right after that, Lucy? I'm going to go up to him. I'm going to increase my proximity to him. The tone of my voice is going to regulate his shame. Oh, darling, I didn't mean to shout. It's just I shouldn't have left that there. And I could have hurt you because it's really sharp. And he doesn't understand all those words, but it doesn't matter because I'm using that really, that soothing tone. And what I do is I regulate over time, that shame gets regulated. And shame turns into guilt. Guilt says, I did a bad thing, but I can repair, I can learn from it, I can say sorry. That's guilt. Shame says, I am the bad thing. I am the utterly awful, terrible thing. And I cannot change that. I absolutely cannot change the filthy, disgusting thing that I am. Therefore, we when we're in that, we have a shield of shame. And the shield of shame starts off usually with complete denial. So Billy kicks Bobby. Billy, you kicked Bobby. He's crying. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Well, darling, I saw you do that. Look, he's really upset. No, I didn't do it. And that's not really working. So you might go into minimization. Hey, I didn't kick him that hard. I didn't kick him that hard at all. Okay, but he looks like it was hard. He's really, really upset. And then that could go into rage. You blame me for everything. You don't love me. You always take his side. So there are these things that we do to try and not feel the shame. But once those fail, we then go into rage. And that's why I always say it's the rocket fuel for aggression.
And the precursor, or the reason why this rocket fuel is there, is because the child has been shamed as a young, So that's a key, perhaps, to parenting, that shame is not something you should bring upon the ego of a young person because they can't handle it.
And I think the key is a lot of people say they've got no empathy. They can't say sorry. They have got empathy, but no, they can't say sorry. We have to help them. We have to help them say sorry. And again, in the book, there's kind of how you do that over time. But no one's ever said sorry to these kids for what happened to them. Most of the time, the first they ever hear of it is when they're sat in front of me on my sofa.
Yeah.
Because they're able to say to them, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Like, what happened to you? I'm so sorry you had 7 moves by the time that you were 4 years old.
Yeah.
And I think often people, because we expect an apology, we can miss attempts at that. So like a little lean in, or I made you a cup of tea. And what we can do is say, oh, that feels like a repair. Thanks for that. So yeah, shame is absolutely huge.
A driver.
Still got to address that. There's still got to be a consequence. Like if Billy kicks Bobby, he's still gonna, like, we're gonna need to find a way to repair. We're gonna need to find a natural consequence for that. You're gonna have to carry Bobby's school bag for a week for the next couple of days because he's limping because you kicked his leg so hard.
Yeah.
Still do all of that stuff. Dan Hughes, 2 hands. You've got to be able to understand the child's world and accept. Because maybe Bobby said something about his mum and he doesn't live with his mum and that fueled his shame. So we've got to be really curious about that and accept their experience, their motives, their beliefs about themselves and about the world. We don't judge any of that, but we do have to judge the behavior.
Understood. Yeah. So your book, The Unofficial Guide to Therapeutic Parenting for Childhood Aggression and Violence, there it is. Yeah. Thank you for showing us. That offers language to help children understand their emotional states. Can you share examples of this language?
Um, yes, the zones of regulation are really important. Helping to doing a bit of psychobiology with children. You know what? This when you get this feeling inside of you, it's all about the narrative. So I give tons and tons of kids the narrative around why they feel the way they do, why they have come to be adopted, why they worry that why they have to give their friends sweets all the time because they otherwise they won't be friends with them because I'm not good enough. I have to kind of buy my friendships. So narrative underpins everything that we do with children, whether that's this is a thing that went wrong, on a Monday, or whether that's this is an ongoing thing that you find really difficult. And here's why I think you find that really difficult. I really want to help you with that. I really want to be there for you with that. So it's the child's story that helps to address that. And I was just going to say another thing about shame, because you mentioned that, we've got to be careful about what we say. But often it's nothing to do with us either. It's about something that's happened out there. And it's not even us saying trying to address an unwanted behavior. So for example, Lisa, our foster daughter, loved her scooter, absolutely loved it, went everywhere on it. And we were coming out of church one day. So our church met at a school. And so there's a big driveway up to the secondary school. And we were just leaving. And she said, "Mum, can I scoot home and then by myself?" And I said, "Absolutely you can. Be careful on the roads. We will be right behind you," because we were walking. I said, "And just stay there when you get there." "Great, thanks very much." So off she goes. She starts scooting, and then she gets kind of to the end of the driveway, hits a stone or something, and comes off the scooter. And then she's kind of wrapped herself in this tiny little ball on the floor of the pavement. And there's lots of lovely, well-meaning people standing by, and they all start to go over and say, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" And I came across as a bit of a cold-hearted cow because I went, "She's fine. She's fine. She's absolutely fine. It's cool. You can go." And then when they'd gone and they were out of earshot, I bent down right next to her and I said, "They've all gone now, darling. They've all gone. We can get up." Because if they'd have touched her, made a fuss of her, she would have exploded because she was so in shame at that in that moment
Wow.
because she'd fallen off a scooter. That was
Wow.
enough. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Gosh.
So
Yeah.
I felt like I wanted to give that example because
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about something that we've said or we've
No.
done. It
Can
life
be any
happens
trigger.
and it
Yeah.
triggers.
Yeah. So you use playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, empathy. These are the pace. This is um, the the thing that's used in care visions. Can you just talk a little bit about these four things and trauma parenting? How does that fit into managing aggression? The pace, the playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. These four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So playfulness is an interesting one. It's not about playing with your child, though that's really important as well. It's about a way of being, because we can't experience joy or laughter or playfulness when we're in survival. So creating an atmosphere of lightness, of levity, is really important because it allows a child to not be in survival. And it instills hope. Having playful moments with a kid instills hope that, oh my gosh, maybe I don't always have to feel like this. When we think about our nervous system, there's this thing called the polyvagal ladder. I won't get into it now. But it's kind of at the top of the ladder, we're in safe and social, and then we go to flight and fight and shut down. And it's like having lots of rungs on a ladder, and there's lots of rungs in each different zone of regulation for people who aren't traumatized, but for people who have experienced developmental trauma, there's not many rungs, so they find themselves sliding down this polyvagal ladder really, really quickly. And the reason that we develop multiple rungs of our ladder is because we play in childhood. Who's ever played hide and seek and felt that rush of like, I've got to be dead quiet and still, but my heart's beating really fast in case they find me, or stuck in the mud. Oh, I've got to be here now, but I need someone to get me. Oh, now I'm off on the run again. Peekaboo. that baby always is like, oh, jump, but it's you found me. And then there's that delight. And that's what develops all those multiple rungs on our polyvagal ladder. And traumatized kids don't have those experiences. So being playful is like adding a few little rungs to their ladder.
Right.
Acceptance is what I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We've got to judge the behavior, but we can't judge their motivations, their beliefs,
No.
their experiences, their thoughts, their feelings. We've got to offer acceptance to that. It wasn't okay for you to kick Bobby, but I can see that you were really angry because he said that thing about your mom, and you don't get to live with your mom, and that's so hard. And what I did there is I then went into empathy. Empathy is I'm quite sweary, so I say empathy is about staying with the shit. It's staying with the emotional crap inside. So what we do as British people a lot in our culture is we try and fix it. So my kid says I'm rubbish at maths. Oh, no, you're not, darling. You're really good at maths. Instead of that, what we need to do is say, oh my goodness, yeah, I wouldn't want to go in for a maths test today if I was feeling like I was rubbish at maths. You don't have to agree with them. You're just saying, if I felt like that, that must be really hard. So being able to connect to their pain and stay with it rather than jump into problem solving. We can get to problem solving and we can get to reassurance, but we cannot go there until we've done empathy. We have to stay with the difficult feelings before we try and problem solve. And I skipped over C for curiosity, but curiosity we kind of touched on.
We've talked about that a lot. Yeah.
Being really open to, I wonder what happened when. I wonder if we even know. The witless wondering.
So we're moving now on to foster carers themselves, and they can often feel really isolated after difficult incidents. What supports do you think should be in place? Who can they really reach out to, and what can they do if they're not able to manage things and they aren't coping very well?
Yeah, you can't do fostering and adoption alone. It's just not an option. You have to have a network around you, and you have to have the capacity to ask for help. It is what, so to the extent that of the families that I've worked with, those without networks or with very little networks fare far worse. There are far more breakdowns of families who don't have those support networks than the families that do. So ideally, every foster care and adoptive family, SGO family, would have a really robust network. And if they don't, I would really encourage, let's find ways of changing that. Let's find ways of identifying what you need and your child needs. I talk about having different types of mates. There's like a mate that just takes your kid out for an iced coffee every week just to give you a breather. There's your mate that does the ironing, the practical mate that does the ironing and hangs the picture back up when it's been smashed off the wall. There's your mate just for you that you don't even talk to about fostering or about parenting, but they just take you out for a glass of wine. You know, you need all these different types of people in your life. And if you get to a point where you are going to, I think someone's asking what the book's called. I'll put it in the, if someone could put it in the chat, that'd be great. Everyone needs a bit of all of that. And your child does too. So network is hugely important.
Yeah. So what can you think of any sort of one action you can take just now, tomorrow, to help reduce aggression and increase connection? Just a thing that people can do to those people listening? Or do you think it's not, there aren't just one thing, it's too
Of
complicated?
course, there's not just one, but as you were talking, I'm just going to say what came to me is slow it down. Slow down your interactions as much as possible. If you text a kid or you write something down, for those that are able to read, it goes through a different part of our brain that processes more slowly than verbal stuff. So if you can, thank you, Ava, if you can use that to slow things down, do that. The number of times we had notes under the door, I hate you, I don't want to live here. I know you're really, really cross right now. Do you want a packet of crisps? If you can get a text exchange of some sort, that's really, really helpful. And in terms of the verbal stuff, it's okay for you to say, I don't know what to say to that right now. Can I just go away and have a think? We don't always have to give kids a response straight away. Like, oh, do you know what? I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed at the moment. Can I come back to you and give you an answer in 2 minutes? I know you really want to go to this party, but my brain is a bit scrambled and I just need 5 minutes to go away and talk to someone about it and think about it. So anything you can do to slow it down rather than being drawn into explanations or arguments. Yeah, anything you can do to slow it
Yeah.
down.
And that helps because in that time they may be able to regulate themselves as well. So the conversation, because presumably you can't really communicate until that regulation has happened, as you say. So you acknowledge, regulate, and then you can communicate, and that's key. So we have got quite a lot of questions. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to start turning to those. The first one. I'm a head teacher. I have a couple of children going into year 1 in September who will actively try to hurt adults. We can back away, but they will come at us and they will hit and kick. This means we have to leave the room to keep safe. We use emotion coaching and have a therapeutic approach, but this doesn't work effectively at these times. Any ideas, please? And
Oh
thank
my
you.
goodness. I Are you team teach trained? We haven't talked about restraint. It's not a lovely subject to talk about, but often children need a sense of being held. If we
Yes,
allow a
we
child.
are, is the answer that's just popped
Fantastic.
through. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, it sounds as though you're at that if they're, if you are having to physically move out of the way and that moving away doesn't regulate the child, I would suggest that that child needs a hold of some description. So because if children are allowed to hurt, if children are allowed to damage, they feel scary. They feel afraid of themselves and they feel like adults cannot keep them safe. And that's a really, really horrible, frightening feeling that you are some kind of monster. So yeah, I would use your team teach at that point.
Yeah. So no particular things. If they're hitting and kicking and they have to just leave the room, you're just saying just outsource that, really.
Not outsource it. Hold on to the child.
Oh, hold on to the child. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah,
So
team teach.
actually, while they're hitting and kicking, just grab the child, just grab them and hold them. And
Yeah,
yeah,
particularly as in your profession. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. The
yeah.
head teacher.
Oh,
And they're so
Becky.
little as
Yeah.
well. It will
Ah,
regulate them. It will regulate your child because they
they're
they
6.
feel like
Yeah.
little monsters in that moment.
Right.
So they
Okay.
need to be held,
Yeah.
um, which usually turns into a hug, which is brilliant,
Right.
because they are not feeling safe
I'm with
themselves
you. That's
because they're
great. And Becky, the head teacher there, said thank you. So she's picked that up. So there's a Fred here who says, I would say lean into the relationships to create more safety. Time together. I think he's responding to Becky. Time together to help regulate at many points during the day. The environment may be too much for the children to cope with. Yes, I was speaking to headmistress recently who said that sometimes people don't like being back to the door. They don't know the footsteps. It might be near a window that's too noisy for them if they're near a device. There's lots of things within the school that, as you say, communicating, understanding triggers are key to this. So, yeah, neutral spaces. So there's lots of replies to this: neurodiversity, virtual school support, and yeah, there's a lot of interaction with that. So there's any more questions? Oh, we've got a question here from Lauren. Is there any advice to help with a teen school refuser who responds very aggressively every morning when woken and risks escalating into red zone, but pressure around attendance means you don't always feel like you can walk away?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. So,
Oh,
I mean, initially, my curiosity says, okay, what is it that this kid is finding so hard? They sound scared. They sound scared to go into school because if they're being woken up and whooshing straight up into red, that smells a bit like fear to me. So, yeah, I hear the pressures of attendance, but I grow a rhino skin and not worry about that. Your kid's mental health is the priority. We don't want them to reach the point where they're going nowhere. But it does sound as though that child is afraid of school and is overwhelmed by school. And it might be that some really drastic change in terms of schooling, I don't know what, because I don't know your kid, Lauren. But it sounds as though they're really struggling to be in school.
So you would not put them in school. You would just not force them to school, because it's a big problem, isn't it? We have, I think it's 100,000 children who are now absent from school, something like that, absent or severely or regularly absent, and there are lots of children that just are too anxious to go to school. But you're saying you can't just chase them around in their pajamas and force them in the car. That's not a thing. So
No.
so how then would you deal with authorities? Because obviously the schools have a mandate to have kids in school, and that's, they have to have a full
Yeah.
register. So
Well,
how do you?
often chronic lack of attendance, and you're right that it's risen hugely. Off that often will then trigger a reaction from school, um, which means that they're like, okay, there really is a problem here. If you're sort of sticky plaster and you're making him or her go in, um, they're not going to be convinced that the problem is so big, maybe. But if your child is just not managing to go to school,
So
they need to
what
come
would they
back.
do in that circumstance? That I accept that this is not appropriate for the child to go to school because they just are responding so aggressively, and it's just unsafe for them. So what is the approach that they should then take? Do they approach the school and say, or do they approach a doctor, or
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole other podcast, I'm afraid.
yeah,
How different schools deal with it
yeah,
is different for all schools are different. Some do loads, some do bare minimum. Um, yeah, a doctor's note would be really good
yeah,
if that is. I often advise that get as many people writing that your kid is cripplingly anxious.
yeah.
Then yeah,
So they can get signed off, and
yeah.
yeah, good luck with getting a doctor's appointment, but come eventually. There's a comment here from Jude. Pace, so playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy ideally is great, but at times of extreme defiance and aggression, we avoid playfulness and curiosity. We then go straight to A&E. I'm not sure what Jude means by
Yeah,
that.
I do. I do absolutely
Okay.
know what Jude means. Yeah, Jude, completely agree with Jude. Particularly in the teenage years, playfulness can then feel like we're mocking the child. And curiosity is too they're so dysregulated that the idea of wondering about what's happening inside of them is really, really scary. So we drop the P and the C and we stick with acceptance and empathy. Wow, I can see you're so upset right now. I'm here. I'm just here. I'm not
Yeah.
going anywhere. I'm just here. So that kind of anything you can do to connect. But yeah, drop the P and the C.
So you're saying stick with these two, uh, curiosity and empathy. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Sorry,
acceptance and
drop
empathy.
the acceptance and empathy. So you don't need to go to A&E, but drop. Yeah, you can't be playful. And right. So Lauren has just come back with a comment with the school refuser. I think they do have ADHD and autism. I don't know if that makes a difference. I think Lauren's
Should
was.
do. It really should do. Because schools, if it's a mainstream school, it's kind of square peg in round hole stuff. So that would potentially make a child with autism highly anxious.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot that could be done there, and it's going to be sort of nuanced according to their particular school and the people to support. So Dougie's come in with a comment for Becky, who is the head teacher. So let's just examine that. Becky, if you haven't done so already, arrange an early visit to the school when no one else is in attendance, just so they get a feel for the setup. Work out safe places, safe routes, build a bond with the teacher. So I think that might be something that maybe Dougie's had experience of. Then Laura has come in with a comment. Would you approach neurodiversity any different to trauma from early childhood?
I would take it into account. I would absolutely take it into consideration. So for a child, so I'm just going to make stuff up now, but to try and illustrate the point.
Yeah.
So for a child with autism, it might be that they that we avoid eye contact much more in an interaction, whereas you would often want eye contact. You avoid that because that might be too difficult for a child. It's about saying all of this trauma stuff applies, but also what do we need to know about these other traits or conditions that my kid has? One of my kids had definitely had like a verbal processing thing going on, and I had to differentiate when she would look confused and when she would sort of dissociate a little bit because I'd said something to her and she didn't understand it. I had to differentiate between has what I said triggered something because of a trauma, or has she not understood what I've said? And do I need to go back over that? And we got really good at that. Just going, do you need me to say that again, darling? Or does that sound a bit scary, for example?
Yeah. We've got a comment here again from Dougie. I don't know, he must, maybe he's got good experience here, but talking to the school refuser carer, don't force them into school, but please ensure you communicate with the school, explain the situation and work with the school out on a plan. There may be subjects they like and would be happy to attend. Regular attendance for these subjects would be a good platform to build from. So that may be something to try. A message from Alison. This is for the morning problems, the child who wouldn't, I think that is the school refuser. Perhaps think about how the child is waking naturally or by another person or noise, alarm. Maybe this person's also, Alison's had experience, I don't know. Low arousal approach may be helpful. How much language is used in the morning too depends on demands triggering their nervous system. Is there anything can give way to a lower demand on the child in the morning? Cortisol is highest in the morning. I didn't know that. And even recognizing this allows us to have more empathy, also the anticipatory stress of the day ahead. So that's going to be very much about the child. So yes, I mean, it's school refusal. That's something you've come across, Carly, is it? We've
Yeah,
5
it's
minutes
huge.
left, to talk
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. And all the comments that have been made about it so far, I would totally agree with. They've been really, really helpful. It is a really big problem. Um, and and that, yeah, particularly that idea of, is what can you access? What do you feel safe accessing? Is a great one. And that might be nothing, in which case hopefully the school should then come back to you and say, okay, are we the right provision? Do we need to look at a different type of support? Um, I was in a meeting earlier, and for ages they've been kind of trying to shoehorn these two very traumatized girls in attending a setting. And we managed to convey to them these children cannot attend a setting, but look at all these amazing things that the tutor and myself and mum has done to make them re-access the world. They've gone from a place of only being in their bedrooms to now accessing the world. Can we model their education on that?
I know we haven't got long, but I bet this is touching a lot of buttons for a lot of people. So re-accessing the world, there's a lot of children who are in their bedrooms a lot, if not, almost permanently, and school refusers may well be among them. Those attempts to help them re-access the world, are they more about enticement? I mean, you can't just offer ice creams all the time. Have you
No.
got any quick tips for that?
No, enticement I don't think works.
Right.
Um, it's more about kind of noticing what they can manage. Okay, you can sit with me in the garden. You can there's that person that you like, that you can tolerate having them over for tea. Um, you can still go to that one shop with grandma because you've been going there with her since you were tiny, and that place feels safe for you. So it's
Right.
trying to find pockets of safety in
Yeah.
your community.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we've got very little time left. It's been so fascinating. Thank you so much, Carly. And if you'd like to explore this topic further, Carly's book, The Unofficial Guide to Therapeutic Parenting for Childhood Aggression and Violence, is available. We can send out links there. You can look at it on Amazon. And there's lots of people who are thanking you very much, Carly. There's been a lot of recognition for what you've said and the help you've given. So really appreciate that. And thank you so much for this. Thank you, Lucy and Carl. Very informative session. Thank you. So a lot of information there, and I'm sure people will be keen to a lot of thanks coming through. Keen to pick up your book. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. Brilliant. So we've had massive need for this education on this. We wonder why there is not a book out there. How there isn't much out there already. It's a sort of unmet need, but luckily there's that there. So thank you very much.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.